Hey friends, I'm Jess Connolly. I'm an author, a coach, a Bible teacher, and a local church leader, and I love talking to real people who know what it means to have full lives, but also want to walk in abundance. This podcast is for you. It's not my podcast, it's ours. It's for people who crave lighthearted conversations and deeply spiritual truth. It's for people who are busy, tired, waiting, growing, dreaming, working, or praying about what's next. Wherever you're listening from, if it's quiet, mundane, or busy, I am praying for you, and I'm so glad you're here. Let's go. Pew, 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 pew. We're back, baby.
What a way to start a podcast. That's awesome.
You're way better at laser noises. Do you want to do it?
No, that was really good. That was strong.
Hello, friends. We're back. And honestly, it was unexpected. When we brought the podcast back this spring, the plan was to do 2 seasons this year, one in spring and one in fall. And we are still doing a fall season, and it's spectacular. I'm so excited about it. We've got guests flying into Charleston. I'm flying some places to record podcasts with people. I'm really, really, really excited about this fall's podcast series. But about a week ago, I got kind of a harebrained idea, which is not all that harebrained. But because I'm a rhythmic, scheduled person, anytime I want to do something that's out of the schedule, it feels a little harebrained to me. And so I went to you, Nicholas Connolly, and my team and said, you know what? I feel like we need a short podcast series this summer. I had 2 things happen. The first is I got my 5th DM of a day where people were like, hey, are you going to have a podcast this summer? I would really need an episode right now.
Wow.
And I really appreciate that because my favorite podcast still comes out all summer and I listen to it. You and I are listening to a lot of podcasts right now. I feel like we're trading podcasts back and forth. To be honest, I bet I'm listening to more podcasts now than I did during the school year.
You gotta send me some. You don't send me any.
I don't know if you'll like mine as much.
I send you so many.
Okay, I've been listening to some great episodes lately. Okay. But we just have such different interests.
I know. I'm willing to go to your level if you come to mine.
Okay. But I'm like, I only do this podcast for you guys because I love you and, I hope it's a blessing. And so I'm like, yeah, I feel that. So that was number 1. Number 2 is that then probably the number 1 question I've always been asked to do an episode on is women in ministry. And
Cue laser noises.
Pew, pew, pew. Pew, 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 pew. And I just have really not wanted to do it.
Uh-huh.
And I want to say why, first of all. For me, it's not fear. It's that I really know, I sense that I know my lane of what God has called me to. And even the people that he's called me to. And a lot of times when you engage in a conversation like this online, where there's so many different viewpoints, a lot of people are trying to convince people who don't believe them, don't agree with them. And I actually don't sense that's the kind of ministry God's called me to. I want to spur on like-minded women. And I also, while I have my own perspective, I feel like I have a really nuanced appreciation for different perspectives, which you don't find in this conversation.
Yes.
Typically, people are like, I believe what I believe. I can't believe anybody else believes that. And I think what people might hear from today's episode regarding my story and our story is that I have lived very many perspectives of this.
Yes.
So I have a lot of grace for past versions of myself in the same way that I have grace and patience for other people in other perspectives. And grace is maybe even not the right word. I don't know collectively that it's like what they're doing is a sin. I think there are people who sin on all sides of this conversation, in this conversation. But I think there are many faithful ways to interpret God's word. And I think everybody should graciously and kindly live theirs out if it's not harming other people. Anyway, we're going to talk about women in the church.
Let's do it.
A 4-part series.
You also said something when you were recording the story to tee up this just now, is you said, I think you were trying to hint at this, but just to clearly say, is you were like, I'd rather focus more on doing than talking.
Absolutely. I'd rather show what I believe. And to be totally honest, when I was processing, should I do this podcast series, there were a couple of people who were like, are you a little worried that your podcast listeners will you might lose some people? And I was like, no, because everybody who listens to my podcast knows I'm a local female pastor. If they so diametrically are opposed to that they don't feel like they could faithfully listen to me, then they would probably already be gone.
And I feel like you have a very mature audience to where if someone doesn't necessarily land on the same page as you, they're still around.
I hope you guys rub that in. You guys, you are gracious. I tell podcast guests all the time, they're like, hey, I'm going to say something a little spicy. Is that okay? And I'll be like, my girls, the gals and guys, hey guys, we see you, we hear you that listen to the Jess Connolly podcast. They are like, this is our podcast. We're going to hear from a lot of different people. That's how we're going to grow. You guys are incredible. You're so mature. We don't get in fights around here. You know what I'm saying? Or I don't hear about it. Yeah. So that's fine. But
could be true, but I think you got a good crew. That's what I would say.
Thank you. I agree. You guys are a good crew. We're a good little group of pals. I love you guys. So this first episode, I really am just going to share a little bit of our story. If I skip details or if I embellish a number, which you know I am want to do. That's why I like Nick to tell a story with me. But I will tell you that I did write out a physical timeline.
Whoa. Yeah. Okay.
Do you want to see it? I felt like I really needed to be faithful. I looked up actual years, and I think that is how I'd love to start this series, just so the friends know where I'm coming from. So hi, I'm Jess Connolly. This is my husband, Nick Connolly.
Hi.
This series is called Women in the Church, and this first episode is really just, hey, this is my story. Yeah. So here's my little timeline. You see where we're going?
I love it. It's always so pretty. You're so good at creativity.
I'll say this for the first time, but I have a feeling I'll say it in every episode, if not multiple times in every episode. I am wholly uninterested in convincing anyone to believe what I believe.
Yes.
That is, in fact, not the point of this podcast. And I hope you'll hear that, especially in the story today. Like this is not to say like all women should be pastors. Certainly, I don't believe that they should. In the same way, I don't believe all men should be pastors. And it's certainly not to say I think you should go to a church that believes exactly what we believe, or that if you go to a church that doesn't believe what we believe, that it's a bad church. I do not believe that at all. I believe there's just a really beautiful array of faithful perspectives on this. But I will say explicitly my purpose is that God would be glorified. That I would hope, I say this phrase a lot, I would hope that this series would help bring the renewal of the church. It's a phrase I use a lot. That's what I want my life's work to be about. That's what I do at Go and Tell Girls. That's why I write books. That's why I travel to teach. That's why I host the podcast. That's why I post on social media. I want to see the renewal of the church. And I also want women to live as free as they already are.
Yeah. Can I add a sub objective there? Is I think a lot of people live in the tension more than they need to. Yeah. And so I think a lot of people believe that probably the same thing that we believe. Yeah. But I actually think that there are a lot of people that don't have the freedom or the license to walk in what they see in scriptures. And so I think because we can get in a little bit is I think we both have such a high view of scripture that this journey in some ways was a little bit about, and we can get into it, but toxicity. Yeah. But then the other parts were like, man, we are just really slow to put ourselves under the word of God. And so if we're jumping out doing the thing, and so I think sometimes when you have something that's stirring in your heart, or that you just believe in your gut that you see in the word, sometimes it just takes like the cloud of witnesses of the people of God to just say, oh my gosh, like again, everybody has differing perspectives as Christian believers. So it's like this beautiful mosaic that we make up that hopefully displays more fully who Jesus is. But sometimes when you find a group of people that are like, oh my gosh, like they really love this or care about this, not in a way that makes it an idol, but in a way that frees me into be who God's called me to be. Yeah. And so I think I would add that as like, man, maybe there's some people listening that are just like, man, we've felt this for a while. Yeah. We don't feel like we've been a part of an environment that maybe has given us the freedom to
be curious. Yeah. Here's one more purpose I just thought as we're talking.
We're throwing them out there.
And I think there might be people who are like, okay, well, if you're going to talk about women in ministry and what they have the freedom to do, why do you have your husband on the podcast? And that's because, sister, he's still my husband. And I really respect him. And he's my pastor. And he's lived this story with me. It's not just my story. And I will say again, for me, the goal is not just more women in ministry. The goal is an Edenic return to male and female partnership.
Yeah, they're side by side.
And then the last thing I'll say, so this would be another purpose for me, is that if you and your husband have differing views on this, I would love if you could listen to this podcast together, because what you're going to hear is that for many years we had differing views on this. And I always say this about my books and podcasts. Literally, it is my blessing that if you can share my book with someone, even if you guys don't agree with me, even if you use my words as a jumping off point to get to what you believe, I feel like that is such a win.
Yeah.
So a lot of times I'll tell people, like, if you're really trying to engage in a conversation with somebody about something I'm talking about or something a book is about, like, send your friend the book and be like, hey, do you agree with this? It won't hurt my feelings. I'll probably never know if you do disagree with me, but it will bless me because really, I believe you hear from God. I believe our triune Godhead is a good communicator. I believe his word, when studied with a desire for faithfulness and curiosity, and it is the guide we need. And so I am not the best communicator in this realm. Use our conversation as a jumping off point if you need to, even if you don't agree with us. That's beautiful. So we've given you all the purposes. Yes.
Well,
you got another one?
Yeah. Well, you just said something that just sparked something. Is what's so crazy is I have seen a lot of people give incredible perspectives on what's transpired over the last month or so, but also over the hundreds of years in the church.
Yeah.
But what has been interesting is I've seen some men jump on and give great perspectives and probably we would both agree with. And then I've seen women jump on. And when I say jump on, I mean like all the avenues of communication.
Yeah.
And they give an incredible perspective that we agree upon.
Yeah.
But I haven't, I'm not saying it doesn't exist, but I haven't seen both a male and a female jump on and give a thoughtful just conversation around it, because I think it's so interesting, because I think it's so important for men to lead in such a way that humbly serves to lead what could be the Edenic return.
Yeah.
And I think it's very important that women have a voice, because the years and years and years of walking faithfully in this, even though it's been hard.
Yeah.
But I just do also feel like it's so great when brothers and sisters can show up at the table and have their conversation and represent, both sides with the same objective.
Yeah, you're right. You're right. We need both. I know women who get mad when men talk about this, especially if men talk about, if men are like, tap, 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 women can be in ministry. And there will be women who will say like, yeah, we've been saying that, but I don't feel that way. Yeah. I'm like, I always tell you, like, if you don't want me to sound like the crazy one in the room, get crazier than me. You know what I'm saying? Which you are. I would say, just like, spoiler alert, we're going to tell our story. I would say you champion my ministry more than I do. And there are now places like we can share this at the end, but like, I'm more cautious about women being on the microphone too much in our church than you are. Because we have a lot of women in leadership, and so I'll be like, we have to represent men as well, so I'm really cautious about, like, if I'm preaching, I want a man hosting, etc. Okay, let's just jump in.
Let's do it.
Okay, we're going to go all the way back to age 0. Okay?
Age 0.
I have 6 phases that I can track in my own life.
What's phase 1?
I call it passive bystander. So in my mind, when I look back at my story, I feel like I was a passive bystander to this conversation until I was about 18. I didn't know that there were limitations on women in the church. When I look back and really examine it, I was in a couple of different denominations before I was 18. I was in a Methodist church. I was in was the church we were in non-denominational? Or
it went from various flavors of Presbyterian to
non-denominational. So it was non-denominational with like a heavy Presbyterian background.
Yes.
Into a Baptist church. So I had been in all of those churches by the time I was 18, and I'd been in a lot of other churches. You and I were like, we were not church hoppers, and then we were like faithful to whatever church we were at, but we would go to 3 services a week. We were not scared. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? So I would go to like Assemblies of God stuff, or I was comfortable in a lot of different denominations.
We say that we're Baptist Presbyterian, and we actually mean that.
We really do mean it.
We've done many things.
We get down with all of it.
Yeah.
You know me, like when we were on sabbatical, I really wanted to head up some Catholic churches. I never actually did, because I ended up just really resting on Sunday mornings. But I thought about it. I thought about it. All that being said, I was a passive bystander to this conversation. I will say I certainly saw women in leadership. Yeah. I did not know any women lead pastors, and that I can remember, I don't have any recollection of seeing a female preaching to an entire congregation.
Yeah.
I don't have any memories of that.
I'm not hesitating. I'm trying to think. Yeah.
It could have happened. specifically the Methodist church I was in, like maybe now what I did see is like on specific retreats or like events, I would see women preaching. Mm-hmm. And this is where I have to say, as a passive bystander, we all have to acknowledge the privilege that we are born into. In this conversation, the massive privilege that I was born into is that my mom is Deb Hopper. And so she is a natural born leader. She is an ordained pastor.
Yep.
She wasn't at the time when I was 0 to 18. She had her own story of being in ministry. I stand on her shoulders on all the fights that she did. And this is a conversation that honestly, she could tell her own whole long story. She has such a history here, but I saw my mom leading and I saw my mom communicating and I saw her trying things in the kingdom, even as a single mom, when maybe there wasn't necessarily like invitation or even encouragement. Like she just obeyed God and she was trying things. But again, now we'll go back and interestingly, her and I were talking about something that happened to her during these years that was like really defeating. Like there were defeating things happening to her all the time as it pertains to what she was allowed to do. And that's her own story to tell. But I didn't know it. Yeah. I didn't know she was having those moments.
And to like give her a little shout out, it's just crazy that if she had those moments, like I think what we're seeing now is the take your ball and go home, which I totally understand.
Yeah, she did not.
In every shape. I mean, men do it too. Like take the ball, go home. Yeah. She like doubled down and kept going.
She stayed faithful wherever she was at, serving, doing what she could do. So I say I was a passive bystander because I didn't know there was any drama around this conversation. So I got saved when I was 15. I have told this story a million times. The next morning, I sat on my bed with a Bible and I was enthralled. And I thought, this is what I want to do for the rest of my life.
But what's so beautiful is because we're not rolling with like influence communicators or like
no.
Even the church circle that we grew up in was like the youth group was very down to earth, like salt of the earth.
Totally.
Like it just was a highly participatory environment. So there was not like one person being the personality.
This is pre-internet. This is like Christian fame was not a thing. Yeah. Like I'm sure it was, you know what I'm saying? But like
televangelists were, how I got down on some Bible network.
You did know a lot about the I didn't know about televangelists. Yeah. I knew like Amy Grant was really cool, but I didn't think I'd be Amy Grant, and it really, I can really say like, I feel like I received that call and that desire with there being no glory associated to it. Yeah. I just thought, I love the Bible and I want to talk about it for the rest of my life. And I really thought, that's what I'll do. So I got saved when I was 15. I met you when I was
16, right?
16. I started going to the church that you went to.
Oh, well, I was there my whole life.
Yeah, where I would say it was very female positive. Again, you weren't going to see a woman pastor. No women were ordained, I don't think.
Well, I was trying to think about it like in the sense of really what it was.
Yeah.
And I have like recollection of it being like very much like Presbyterian in the sense of like elder led, but deacon.
Yeah.
But I just remember a vibrant culture of men and women serving together. We had a lead pastor, but I don't think it was ever out of the sense of trying to hold anyone down. I think a lot of times, and we can, this is a passing point, but I think so many people get attached to leadership structures.
Yeah.
And I have seen every form of leadership structure fail, and I have seen everyone succeed.
Totally.
And so it's like, it's not the structure, it's sin. And so I think when we had our church, it was just a beautiful place for us, but also a beautiful place for our city.
Yeah.
And so I remember deacon, I remember elder.
Yeah.
And I really do, I don't quote me on this, but I really do feel like we had female elders.
Could have been.
I felt like it because they would always list them in the bulletin, and then you would have a term. And so there was so many iterations of what the Presbyterian was that it's just hard to really capture. But going back to what you said, I'm so glad that you started here because this is what we were raised in.
100%.
Yep.
I didn't know any different. I thought women dealt with theology because our like youth leaders did. I thought they thought about the deep things of God. I thought they did the work of ministry, and they did, where we were kind of being like raised in the faith. And for me, that was really just like 15 to 18. That was a really short amount of time, 16 to 18, really just 2 years, 2 really formative years of my life. And I really looked at some of those women. I'm going to name them now. I don't know if they'll ever listen to this podcast, but Kelly Cowan and Beth Assis and Rebecca, I don't know her new last name.
Yeah, Lambert.
Yeah. And those women, I was like, I want to be like them. And I still do. I'm still, in a lot of times, doing my best impression of them. I do want to be transparent to say, in that 16 to 18 phase is also when I learned about Beth Moore. And that is where I will say, I didn't see...
You at 16?
Yeah, my mom and Katie
and I... in college.
Yeah, I think my mom and Katie and I went to our first, we drove to see Beth Moore for the first time. My mom had probably already been, but we went to go see her for the first time, definitely when I was still in high school. Because when you and I went on that passion trip, that was the summer after our freshman year, I'd already done 5 of our Bible studies.
Yeah.
So that was me and my mom and Katie's form of vacation. We would go see Beth Moore wherever she was teaching. And I will say, while I didn't see her teaching and think, I want that level of prominence, I want to be at that kind of a stage, I did think okay, well, there's a vision of what I want to do. That is what I want to do.
I would say the other part too that I always remember is, and correct me if I'm wrong, but your favorite Bible study was A Heart Like His.
It was one of them. David. I really liked A Heart Like His.
And I remember in all of those things, it really was a hunger and thirst for God rather than the platform, because we just didn't have a picture of a platform.
I wanted God.
And
when I was 13, 18, I want God the way I wanted God those 2 years for the rest of my life.
And I think the other part too is the platforms that we had were not... the only word I can say is sexy. They were not. They were the grindiest things that we've done. So I just captured that to say there was really something going on in your heart.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I just wanted Jesus, and I wanted to work for the church. So now I'll go into part 2. Phase 2.
This is where it gets interesting, because I think what's so crazy is we probably both had moments.
Yeah.
But in for different reasons.
Maybe, and you might have to remind me of some, because we'll get into it. I'm saying 18 to 22, what I'm labeling this is in my gifts but under submission. When I was 18 is probably when I realized, I don't just love the Bible, I think I'm good at teaching. It was probably the first time someone told me, you are gifted at this.
Who was that?
Anthony Thomas, my first ever real boss and person who pastored me individually.
And I think even to say something now as a little nugget of capturing is we were in a church that did not
support women teaching.
Yeah.
It wasn't the norm. It was not the norm for them.
But under him, so the reason I'm capturing this is because he was in an environment that did not in any way, shape, or form promote this.
Yeah.
And somehow he was able to lead you in such a way that called out your giftings.
Yeah.
And it was just so cool to watch him. I mean, I just there was a favor there.
Yeah.
That was just incredible in the midst of almost favor in Egypt.
Yes.
He was just
I agree. I did have favor with him, and I had favor there. Yeah. I was actually telling someone this story this weekend. And even when I think about what it was a large Southern Baptist church. And I got hired to be the youth intern.
And we went to that church not because of denominational affiliation. It was because it was the biggest college ministry, the biggest student thing.
Exactly. I didn't even know what Southern Baptist was.
Yeah,
I didn't know what it meant.
That was our first rodeo.
And that church changed our life. I mean, it changed the trajectory of my life. A lot of the ministry tools that I am still using today, I learned in that span of time.
You talk about the toolbox all the time.
I tell the story of the toolbox all the time, and I might tell it on this episode just to make you guys laugh. But I was hired as the youth intern. And when I was telling somebody this story this weekend, I think it was the first time now, 20 years later, more than 20 years later, that I can look back and say, also, it's pretty wild. They wanted to hire both of us. All of our friends were beginning to work for parachurch ministries. And all of a sudden, you and I were like, hold on, we love the church. I think we love the local church. We could go on staff at these other parachurch ministries. We could do FCA. We could do Young Life. All of those things are beautiful. But we think we might be specifically called to the local church. And that was a very strong conviction for us. So they were like, hey, we want to hire you guys, which was also crazy because it was my freshman year of college, your sophomore year of college. But when I look back and I realized that Anthony looked at the two of us and he did hire you to be the worship leader, but that he hired me to be in this intern role that would cause me to teach. And so that he didn't even hand you that job saying like, well, you'll be the one to teach. You did teach, you know, but I think even that, like, that was remarkable for me. But then also, again, as an 18-year-old young blonde girl who doesn't know a lot, the larger church began to peg me for some things of like, hey, do you want to do the tithing moment in this like large mega church? I did that a couple of times. Or do you want to? And so all of a sudden I was having these opportunities to speak to thousands of people when I had never done that before, you know? So I'm teaching a youth group of a couple hundred and also having these moments to like step into my gift. And I don't think I noticed how like remarkable that was until 20 years later, you know? Also around that time, I knew I wanted to write. So I started doing some writing casually, writing for some like, do you remember what that Christian newspaper I would write for?
You need to even back it up a little bit more because I just think people don't understand the grind of what it was. Like
there was no internet. Like email was the only thing on the internet. No, I didn't have a blog then yet.
You wrote emails for your roommates.
I wrote emails for my entire dorm.
Yes.
I said, anybody who wants this daily devotional, put your email down or just give me your email anyway. And whether you want it or not, I'm going to send you a daily devotional.
Yeah. You were Substacking before Substack.
I was just emailing all my friends, just like entering in their email address every day and like sending them little daily devotionals. And again, none of this was about like fame or wanting to write books. I was just like, this is a way I can compel people with God's word.
That paper was summer. You were here in Charleston, right? Yeah. It was your only summer home and you wrote a little bit.
Yeah. It was like a Christian newspaper. And I was like, can I submit some devotionals? And they were like, sure. So 18 to 22, I was certainly under submission to the organizations that I was in, but I didn't feel the weight of it for the most part. Now, the funny things that you and I are going to say, see, this is why I knew I needed you to host this with me, because he's making faces at me like you didn't feel it. Okay, there was one story where I was asked to go home on a Sunday because my shoes were too sexy.
You wore a shoe with a heel.
I was wearing long pants. I wasn't wearing a skirt, but I wore a shoe with a heel, and I was approached and said, like, can you go home and change?
Someone approached our first leadership. No, I just don't want to put anybody under this, but somebody approached your leader and said this can't happen.
Yes. And I remember he was really apologetic. I'm sorry I have to say this to you.
Incredibly kind.
Yeah. But what I want to note to you about that moment is I tell that story now joking, but I wasn't mad. I don't remember being mad.
You went home and handled it like a champ.
I remember thinking like, I'll think about this differently, the way I wear, what shoes I wear. I didn't feel shame, but I did not feel under anyone's thumb in this season is what I'm saying. I was in submission to the organizations I was in, but I didn't feel it. So then even in our very early 20s, like 20 to 22, when we moved to Charlotte to help plant an incredible church, Mosaic Church is still going. Like I was obviously in submission to like what their organization was at the time, but I didn't feel left out or excluded because I was a woman, you know?
What are you labeling this time? I have an interesting...
In my gifts, but under submission is what I'm calling it.
You would put Mosaic under that as well?
I wasn't in my gifts at Mosaic, but that was a me problem.
I understand what the expression was of the like, this isn't, I'm going to say circumstance and you tell me the heart thing.
Okay.
But you like got a job at Anthro.
Yes.
You show up to have a 10-hour job while we're married, or $10 an hour job of like part-time while we're married, and they hire you as a manager, which is obviously they should have because you're such a gifted leader.
You're so good.
But then you're like doing the Anthro thing, thinking you're just going to move to Philly and we're going to work at corporate.
Yeah, I did think. I didn't think I would ever be in ministry again.
Why did you get there?
Okay, I think that...
Also, do you love how I just flipped the podcast?
I do. I appreciate that. I think that was probably for me the most true season of like running from my calling.
Why?
I think I was really intimidated by like things of God. And I think that was probably the first time in my life that I was like, well, Nick can be serious about the Lord. I don't know if I want to be all that serious. Wow. Like there might be a cost to it.
Yeah.
And
spoiler alert, you were right.
Spoiler alert, I was right. And I did. I got the job at Anthropology, and I do think I was like pretty enthralled. This was, I wanted to make money. I got excited about making money. I think I got excited about career a little bit. And like,
you did, but I just remember it being a little bit of a dark season in your heart regards to ministry.
And so that's the last part that I'll say, that I don't think that had to do with me being a woman.
Yeah.
But there were a couple of moments where I was excluded or told like, we don't need you at this meeting, or or I just wasn't like pegged. That is a season that has made me really tender as a church planter for the rest of my life. Because what happens when you plant a church, and really for 15 years, we're 13 years into Bright City, is that people are continually coming and you don't know who they are. So no one knew who I was. No one knew that I had been teaching the word. No one knew that I had this gift. No one knew that I was like pretty serious about the Lord. And so I think it was easy to assume that I was like blonde and silly and worked in anthropology. And I just
was actually a brunette at that time.
I think you're right. I was. But I think it was easy for me to like, out of some intimidation and maybe some rejection, just live into that. So there was a period where I was like, I'm definitely not going to be in ministry. I'm going to work at Anthropology Corporate. I think I'm good at this thing. I think I'm maybe good at design and I have a good eye, and I do want to make money, and I want to move up the career ladder.
Because that does not exist in ministry.
No.
Yeah.
So, but I think it was really like rejection and intimidation, but I don't think any of it was because I was a woman.
Yeah. And this is a very quick thing, because I went through the gauntlet during that season of rejection.
You were getting
pummeled
left and right ministry wise.
Did that?
Sure.
Yeah.
Sure. Maybe for me, that was my take my ball and go home moment.
Yeah.
Where I'm like, if this is going to be this hard, which looking back now, I was 20 to 22. I really shouldn't probably have been in leadership during that time. Like, I don't know. I mean,
disagree.
Maybe I should have been leading a group.
I think anyone who aspires to leadership can be developed to be a leader if they have character.
You're right. Yeah. But I think that also maybe here's another thing about that season, if we're being really honest, is that I think that I didn't have the character to uphold my calling. I think that I was good. I'm good at talking and I'm good at writing. I can do those things, but I did not have high character in that season.
What?
I don't remember ever spending time with the Lord in those 2 years.
I think there was a spending time with God. Because I remember when we received that call to go plant or to help them plant, I was in a Starbucks that Saturday night. Literally reading my Bible, praying, because we had been having these visions.
Once we moved, it was seminal once we moved.
But then once we moved, it just was we were getting pummeled.
Yeah.
And I think what was so interesting too is when you, from the planting tenderness, is literally planting is like having a family with your kids being 0 to 4.
Yeah.
And so a lot of people are looking at you with the expectations as if you have teenagers to adults.
Yeah.
And so you're expecting a lifestyle around teenager to adult.
Yeah.
Of they're going to develop me. They're going to pour into me.
Yeah.
All these expectations you have, even outside of the actual church leadership.
Yeah.
And so for us to go through that season, it was very low development, because that's what a church plant is you're essentially forming a family, and we're all kids 0 to 3 years old. And so it looks like eating, feeding, playing, and then doing again. And so I think when you mix that with getting just brought through the ringer, it made it for a tough ministry season for both of us.
Yeah. I'll also say that was the beginning for me of a pretty intense identity crisis as a woman. What does it mean to be a godly woman?
Yeah.
What do I look like? I often tell you, I feel like I became the runaway bride of women's ministry. And by that, I mean Runaway Bride, the amazing rom-com with Julia Roberts. I couldn't remember her name. Julia Roberts, where she doesn't know what she wants. She doesn't know what she likes. She doesn't know what kind of eggs she likes. So anytime she is with a man, she just becomes what that man wants her to be. And I was the runaway bride of women's ministry. So whatever church I was in, I just tried to ascertain what it was they wanted from me. And I think in that season, I think all of these things came to play. Rejection, fear of my own calling, maybe not a well-developed character, or even an abandonment of that character, because I feel like I really went hard after God in college. I didn't struggle with drinking or partying. I was just reading the Bible all day in college. Now I was prideful for sure, but those weren't my issues. So I think maybe there was just a small abandonment of character or pursuit of God. And I was becoming a mom, and I was becoming a wife, and I was just figuring out who I was.
A lot of change in that moment.
That's where we're going to kind of gloss over the next season. Okay. Not gloss over, but we're not going to spend the most time here. And that's 22 to 27. And that's what I call the dark days.
Why are we not spending much time here?
Because honestly, I just don't feel like crying. But I'll say my perspective on the dark days.
Your truth.
And then you add in. we found ourselves, we left Mosaic Church from a call from God. So
I'm so glad you said that.
Yeah. We had our first baby there. I got pregnant with Gloriana, our second baby. We had gone through a really intense medical crisis with Glory. We thought we were going to lose her. Yeah. And in the middle of that, we were kind of processing a call to go west. So I will say in this season, I was hearing from God. I was spending a lot of time with God. Crisis will do that. A medical crisis will do that to you. And I'm like on my knees, just desperate for God. We're perceiving this call to go west, you and me, and take our kids and move as far as we can across the United States to go to Seattle, Washington. There was a church there that we wanted to be a part of, that people that we loved and respected were out there and said, you guys should come out here. God's doing some really cool thing. There's some like really strong Bible teaching happening out here.
I had been following for a few years and it was. There were some really beautiful things happening. And we were getting this call from God to run this ministry, which happened. I've talked about on the podcast. It happened to be a maternity home where it was
twofold. We were supposed to go to Seattle and be a part of this church, and we're supposed to run this ministry together. And again, so maybe this is where a lot of the like pursuit of God comes back, hearing from God, a lot of unity for you and I. We're like digging into the word in new and fresh ways. And we moved to this church where there is impeccable community, and there is incredible Bible teaching, deep Bible teaching. So my love for all things theological comes soaring back. Yours does too. You're deeply involved in like anything that has to do with a pursuit of God and his word. And unfortunately, that church was, no joke, incredibly toxic. And you can dig if you want to, but they have recorded a podcast on it, and I have spoken about it. And I just don't care to name it today because I just don't, but it was toxic. I don't use that word lightly. It was toxic because there were such beautiful things happening that the things that were horrible like took deep root in our heart and our soul and in our lives and in our marriage and in our theology. And so I will say in that season, one piece of that is that there was across the board, no circumstances, like no mistaking, like women were not to be in ministry.
You were missing a piece of that too.
And they were supposed to stay home and have babies.
Yeah.
And like that was the best thing a woman could do. Now there were women who administered to other women. You could like teach other women at a women's retreat, but you had to be a certain type of woman. You had to be very natural. You had to probably homeschool your kids. You had to have a certain look to you that I did not have. You had to be like the kind of woman who made your own bread. And so I learned how to do those things. I want
to steal your line. Make your own bread. And
I'll tell my silly story. If you guys can handle it today,
what do you guys said?
I know what line you're talking about. It's not my line. It's my friend Kim's line.
Oh, that's so funny.
Yeah, but all my friends were very natural. Godliness was all mixed up in like, also did you homeschool, and also could you like make everything? And like, if you went to McDonald's, that was like a literal sin. If you were a woman who earned an income, you were in sin, and your husband would be called out, and you would be called out, which you were. So I did not earn an income, but we worked at a maternity home where we raised support for our salary. And that was, we had people come to us and say like, Nick, you are worse than an unbeliever. One person called you a monster. And I will say from my perspective, you can say your own. I took all of it hook, line, and sinker. I did not debate it. I did not question it. I not only assumed I'll definitely never be in ministry again, but like, I took on a picture of what it meant to be a righteous and godly woman that was completely opposite from who I am. So I immediately went through the darkest depression I've ever felt in my whole life. And what was particularly dark for me about this season, and then I'll follow up with a funny joke to lighten the mood, is that I was incredibly rude and unkind and prideful towards any other women who were in ministry, including women I love. And I thought like, that's just ungodly. It's so ungodly. I convinced a lot of other people that like my perspective was right. My sister and I laugh about it all the time, that she's like, how did you convince me when you lived in Seattle and I lived across the country? I fully convinced my older sister, like women should never be in ministry. And she was like, you're right. Those were just dark days. I hate the pride that entered into my heart. I hate the defeat that entered into my heart. I struggled with massive depression. I not only believed I'd never be in ministry again, I believed I'd never earn an income again. And I believed if I did, it would be ungodly.
Yeah.
And It was really hard. The funny story here is that my friend Kim, who is very funny, she was not the Runaway Bride of Women's Ministry. She was really comfortable being different from all of us. She actually had a job. She was my only friend who had a job.
High capacity.
She had a really high capacity job in fashion. And the rest of us were wearing like sackcloth and ashes that we had sewn together. And she loved Diet Coke, which I secretly did too. And I would like go drink them at her house. And she lived very free. And so one day everybody was talking about all the different things that they were making. Well, I make my own yogurt and I make my own soap. And like, do you make your own dish detergent? And blah, blah, blah. And like everybody's comparing all the things they make. And I'm just in it. I'm just like, yes, let me try to make my own things. I made everything. I made yogurt. I made lotion. I made bread. It was bad. I made everything from scratch. And she was like, guys, where does this end? Are we going to whittle our own tampons? Something about that did snap some things out for me. Like I was like, okay, you're right, Kim. Like, where is this going to go?
Such a good line.
I've remembered it for the rest of my days. Those were just really, really, really dark days for me. I think anytime you're running from who God's made you to be, and anytime you feel deep shame about who God's made you to be, and anytime you realize like, well, if I'm not this thing, then I'm nothing. And anytime, I mean, I was overtly told, and you were overtly told that like, essentially we would never measure up. And
you mix that with 2008 to 2010 of the economy and recession. And so not only like we know better now, but like you're looking around and guys would have like $250,000, $300,000, $400,000 jobs.
Yeah.
And we had nothing. And you're being told that like the way that you are living is wrong.
Yeah.
And so you look at your circumstance with their circumstance and you're like, well, Lord, maybe this is the problem. Like maybe this is why. Maybe this is how, like if I just did X, Y, and Z, then things would change, you know?
Yeah. I think I've shared this before on the podcast, but we were living in such a state of poverty. I don't use that word lightly either. We were living well below the poverty line for a long time. We were living in such a state of poverty that I would find myself tempted to steal my friend's mac and cheese. Mm-hmm. We had a friend who her pantry was always full, stocked. And I would think like, she'll just never notice if I just take a box or two. Mm-hmm. And I didn't, praise God. But I really thought about it. Yeah. And you ask, I'm going to pause here and you say like, why wouldn't you ask your friend for a box of mac and cheese? Because we were continually being told that like we were broken and messed up because we couldn't earn money. Mm-hmm. So I have a lot of regrets about those days. I have a lot of thankfulness that the Lord brought us out. And I have a lot of thankfulness that we still love each other and we still love him and we still love the church. Yeah. And how we got out of it is we just left. We didn't leave because we thought it was wrong. Yeah. We were starting to notice some things.
Yeah, and we knew our time was coming to an end. Yeah. And it was very objective. And we knew that we wanted to plant. Yeah. And we had felt like God had called us in that in like 2008. And so we had stayed a little bit longer than even that. Yeah. And like all the things. And so I think it was like the beauty of, I mean, just the like being able to, you know, in faith answer that call to plant really got us out of the sirens of that area.
Now, I will say this. I have included in my timeline that this includes 22 to 27. So we were gone by then. And I'll just kind of cap off this season with, we left with the intention to plant. This is a longer story for a longer day. We left with the intention to plant. We ended up not immediately planting. We settled in Columbia, South Carolina for about 2 years where we had another baby. And at this time, things were starting to shift with me. So I had been writing a mommy blog this whole time, feeling a little bit of shame about it because I was like the weird one blogging, but it was also a different time and everybody was kind of blogging.
And what was crazy is we had both looked at each other and we couldn't make sense of it, but we were like, man, I don't know if we can get back into a church.
Yes, like we had. That. We didn't have language for it, but we were like, we maybe can't do that again.
But what was crazy is we landed in like a Church of Christ that was like even more than that. But then we got out of that one after some time of visiting a few times and tried everything to not and got back into an adjacent and again different culture. Yeah, but same family. I don't know the best way to say it. Yeah. So.
Yeah, very similar. So during that time, I'm writing a mommy blog. Mm-hmm. You are being, at this new church we're at in Columbia, you are being pegged to like do things. Like I think they perceived this is a very godly man. He's probably a pastor, you know.
I showed Josh from our church communicated yesterday. He was preached yesterday at our church. And I showed him, he was talking about, he's like, man, I just don't know if I like feel like this is happening or what's going on. You know, he was just having a lot of questions about preaching before preaching. Mm-hmm. And I was like, hey, actually, actually, I want to show you something. This just popped in my timeline yesterday.
I saw the picture in our shared camera roll.
And I literally said, these were my first days of preaching. It was like in an inner city rec room with like 10 kids who were in and out of jail each week.
Yeah.
And all I did was bring hot and ready Little Caesar pizzas and very lackluster messages. And I was like, this was my beginning.
Yeah. It was really beautiful. So I think you were being pegged as like, okay, this is the guy who should be in ministry, but I don't think they know what to do with me at that 2-year period. And so I'm writing a blog. I started an online business. Whoops, don't even know what I'm doing. And it starts making money.
You try to make night money.
I was just trying to make it a little date night money.
We had a little bit more money than we had, but not a lot.
Not a lot.
5 kids, a family of 5. And
But I didn't feel conviction about earning money anymore. I felt funky about it. I felt a little shame about it. And I'll process that in the next season. Okay. I felt a little shame about it, but I didn't feel, I was like, well, we got to live. This is not working anymore. And you were working a secular job at an insurance company, but still, it was still like really low income for us and for anyone. We're living in a 2-bedroom house with 3 kids. So if that tells you anything. And
a bathroom that barely worked.
And sharing one car, sharing one laptop. But my business started doing well. And in that, because we were like a little bit more financially free and because of a variety of other things, we sensed the capacity to make another move to another church.
Which God had been moving in that as well. It was crazy.
For you to help them replant. So this was going to be the first church that formally ordained you. The plan was always that we would just be there a little bit, help them replant, and then we would go off to plant on our own. So we were there just about a year and a half. Those were incredibly dark days. I would say that was the end of the dark days for me. Like that was at least where I was like, the darkest days.
But what was crazy is in that dark, there was like incredible light in the things that you did.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you what happened. Because we're telling funny stories. This is the funny story. I told somebody again this weekend. It made me want to record this podcast. So I was the runaway bride of women's ministry. So we get to this new community. Again, they're also all homeschoolers. I can't really communicate clearly enough how much I should not be homeschooling. That was not, and also people who loved me in my life would say like, you should not be homeschooling. And I was like, well, sounds like the thing to do. Everybody here is doing it. And so they were like, well, hey, we're all homeschoolers. I remember going to a women's Bible study at this church that a man taught. So like this is not even slightly permissive. I remember there were overt questions about my blog and my business to you, but like that's some of the least hard stuff we encountered in that year and a half. Like you were encountering a lot of hard ministry stuff and I was. It was not in any way permissive, but here's what happened for me. Here's what broke. All the women were like, hey, we're going to go to a homeschooling conference. And I was like, cool, I'll go. I love a conference. I grew up going to Beth Moore.
Yeah, good time.
I love a good Beth Moore conference. Like, let's go. And they were like, okay, well, here's the deal. We're going to actually like pre-make all our food and pack it in coolers and take it.
Coming home after this?
I didn't go. I refused to go on the conference.
That's right.
Because I was like, absolutely not. I'm not going to a conference if we can't eat at Chili's. If you guys are telling me I have to make my own ground turkey and like sweet potatoes and take it to a hotel, right. I'm out. That was what broke me. I was like, I cannot be the runaway bride of women's ministry anymore. If you're on the road, you eat at Chili's. That's the rule. Now I would say if you're on the road, you eat at Chick-fil-A. But like back then I was like, oh, at least can we go have some bottomless chips or something? And I was like, I am sorry. I love you guys and I can learn from you and I can grow with you, but I can't be like you. Which I did. And so some of I have friends from that season that will be close friends for the rest of my life, but I stopped trying to be like them. Like something began to break off of me where I was like, I have to be who God made me to be. It's also the season that I like began writing Wild and Free, or began at least like starting to like write what would become Wild and Free. So in that season, also internet stuff was blowing up. Our online shop blowing up, making hundreds of thousands of dollars, which we did not know how to handle. You began leading the business with me. We began funding other church plants, mostly funded our own church plant. You continue to be able to pastor for free, which was a huge blessing. I had helped start She Reached Truth, so I'm in that kind of online leadership. We had started the Influence Conference, a conference for women, and then the Influence Network, a network for women, none of which are around anymore. But all of a sudden,
I was... The leaders are.
Yes, the leaders are. And so overnight, I found myself in all of this leadership, but not in my local church, which was fine with me. I was like, that's great. And that to me is the end of the dark days. And then I would like to move to the next season, which was really actually the hardest. And that's year 28 to 34. And with that, I just have one word and I call it wrestling.
Okay.
So for me, from 28 to 34, from around the time that we moved here to Plant Bright City to about 2018.
Mm-hmm.
What happened first is that without biblical help, I just started to come to my senses a little bit. And I'm going to share my perspective, and I want you to share yours.
Mm-hmm.
First, I just started to come to my senses, and I was like, I am in ministry. So I just am.
Yeah.
I am pastoring.
Yep.
I am leading.
Mm-hmm.
I am writing things about God.
Mm-hmm.
Why am I not doing it?
Mm-hmm.
And why am I not doing it at our church?
Mm-hmm.
So that was first.
Yeah.
So I kind of, in a very wrestling way, brought that to a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And those conversations were difficult.
And not only were they the wrestling in ministry, I forget what years that would have been for us for marriage, but it's like...
Yeah, it was hard marriage years. That's true.
Can you remember what years those are? You're so much better at years than I am.
28. So 2018.
So 12 to 17 years of marriage like that. And so...
not even, probably like 11. Probably like, honestly, like year 10 to year 16, something like that. Yeah.
And I just remember our dear pastor who married us, youth minister, he said, year 7 to 10, it's like the storming, forming years because you go from me to we.
Yeah.
But then it felt like we had another like round of storming to do because we ended up being on each other's team in marriage, but we had no idea how to be on each other's team.
In church.
Well, not, but even in business and all, like
in everything, calling, all of it.
And some of it, which I can highlight, some of it was definitely like my issues, my sin. But also it's like, even if we were like running on all cylinders, believed all the right things and the same things, that just, we were learning how to do it together.
Yeah.
And it took a long time.
Yeah. Those were really heavy. I had a lot of sin in that too. I brought things to you in really messed up ways. I was often not humble. I think I really was asking like, why am I not doing this with you? Why am I not doing this with you? Why are you doing this and I'm not doing it? Mm-hmm. Like, if we're doing it together, then why aren't we doing it together? Mm-hmm. But also, I really wanted validation from you. And I put way too much pressure on you. And therefore, I think probably like wounded myself a lot. And we've processed this all, guys. We're fine. Everything's fine. Like, there were a lot of days I just wanted you to look at me and say, like, I believe in you. Mm-hmm. And I think that was hard for you, like for a variety of reasons, because of my sin and your sin. But unfortunately, some of those years I was publishing books. I think like probably for both of us, like even book launches were really hard. We would fight every time I launched a book for the first couple books. Mm-hmm. For me, it was because I was looking for a lot of validation from you. And also I didn't feel a lot of permission and freedom in our local church, and so I couldn't make sense of that. But I was also handling it really poorly. And so it's all we fought about. Mm-hmm. It's the only thing we fought about was like calling ministry, church, how to do it together for about 8 years.
Mm-hmm. Mix in like the pressures of business, the pressures of doing that together, mix with the pressures of planting.
Yeah.
In the first 5 years, just the things that you encounter are just insane.
Yeah. And I was bitter. Like I was bitter and prideful. Like I was so bitter and so prideful. And also underneath all of that, there was something really true fighting to get out too. Mm-hmm. Of like, I also think this is my calling. Mm-hmm. And so like I had to get there. We could do 3 podcast episodes about what happened during those 8 years.
Yeah.
But we are going to talk next week about the biblical lens. And I will say, for me, what began to shift is that I stopped saying like, hey, this doesn't feel right, to like, I want to know what God's word says. Mm-hmm. I know all the verses that everybody uses. Mm-hmm. I want to be a woman who lives under the authority of God's word and lives really under the authority of God.
Yeah.
But I don't want to do hermeneutical gymnastics. Mm-hmm. I don't want to like pretend like Paul doesn't matter. Mm-hmm. I want to understand like what is a faithful interpretation of these scriptures. And I will say, I felt humbled enough by the word that if I study this enough and I get somewhere that says I can't teach or I can't preach or I can't pastor, like I'll do that. I felt like that, I was like, it's not gonna be cute and I might be mad at the Lord, but like I'll get there. So I feel like we really actually on our own did that kind of study. Mm-hmm. I did my own, you did your own. And somewhere around 2018, 2017, you came to me and said like, I need you to lead the church with me. Mm-hmm. A couple months after that, I preached for the first time at Bright City. And you gave a really beautiful disclaimer before the first time I preached. And you said, I want you guys to know Jess isn't preaching because she's my wife. Mm-hmm. She's preaching because this is what we're going to do now is we're going to have women teach. And so for me, I'm calling my ages 34 to 38 that would be like 2018 to like 2022, treading lightly.
Well, can I back up to
please.
And I think going into the like church years, all the things is obviously I did not handle it well. And obviously like I just was like, it just felt like we had battles on every front.
Yeah.
And I was like, man, I don't even know like what battles you start with. Because, you know, even the church wasn't even big enough to like, we were still in group form, not in like theology forming. Like it was, and then you would have all kinds of issues. And so I think, but I just looking back, I just was like, man, I did not handle that well. And I think a lot of my sin clouded a lot of it and made the discussions harder. But I think, you know, it's so funny. We tell people all the time, like the only thing we ever fight about is the church.
Yeah.
Because it's like one of those things where you have to, in your marriage and in all things of life is God sends, you need to love God more than those things.
Yeah.
But at the same time, you can love those things well, even in the love of God.
Yeah.
It's so, but I just remember, I think what was interesting, and correct me if I'm wrong, is we were wrestling, but I was really wrestling.
Yes.
Because I think all of the circles that, for a guy who didn't have any input, is that fair to say?
Yeah.
The only places that I was like able to get a foot in the door were probably the not wrong places, but not the best places for who we were and what we believed.
Yeah.
And so it just made for almost like a wilderness season where you know you're supposed to step into the promised land. You just don't know how to get there. And so even when we've been having the conversation about this conversation, it's like, I don't want to just talk about it. I really want to help people get to the promised land because I felt like we walked in circles for a long time because we literally did not have anyone to help us.
I agree.
And I think even going back to like your first time preaching is I think the other wrestle is like, I think everybody's fine with the pastor's wife sharing in most circles. It's like, oh my gosh, pastor's wife, she's preaching. And I was like,
I don't think you're right.
Yeah,
I think there are a lot of circles where the pastor's wife does not get to preach.
Yeah, but you know what I'm saying? Like in those cultures where they think and we can get into the nuance of this later.
Yeah.
But I think sometimes people think they have a women empowering culture and the proof is the pastor's wife preaching.
Yeah.
And I looked at you and I said, no, the proof is not you speaking. The proof is like our daughter speaking or like
a single woman preaching.
Or a single woman
Doesn't bigger than anybody here. Yeah.
And so like I was like, I want a culture of this. I don't want it. So I think number one, that took longer to talk through. I think number two, # we live in the South.
Yeah.
I still talk to guys to this day who agree about the same things that we agree about. And they're like, bro, what are you doing? Why are you doing that?
Why would you have a woman preach?
Or no, why would you do this type of church in South Carolina?
Yeah.
And it's like, I don't understand. Like, why wouldn't I? And then the last thing I would say is it wasn't that I think the battles that we have done in our marriage is I came from a family who did not use words at all.
Yeah.
And so like, it wasn't that I couldn't affirm you as a woman. I was just like, man, I couldn't affirm anything or anyone, including myself.
Exactly.
And so I just like did such a poor job of that in marriage and didn't champion you well or didn't like speak life into who you were and like the giftings that God had given you. And it just, I feel like a lot of the wrestle was more about my sin than anything else.
And what the Lord was getting out of you, like, and getting us out of, but also getting out of you.
Yeah.
And when I share our story privately, I don't want to cut you off if you have more to say.
No, I'm eager to see where you're going.
I'll move to the next phase then. When I share our story privately, and it's my honor to share this publicly, especially if I'm sitting with a woman whose husband like does not affirm her gifting, whether she's ministering in the church or online or whatever, it is a great joy of mine to say, like, Nick has come from 0 to 100. If 100 is the limit, you're at 200 now. And
I gotta get better.
You do not have to get better. And so I would say I am calling the next phase for me, the years 34 to 38, I call it treading lightly. Yeah. And for me, it's because by the time you turned around and said, I need you to lead the church with me, I need you to teach, it's time to go, I feel like then I wanted to tread lightly. Then I got scared. Then I was like, wait, what do you mean? Like, then I was like, wait, what? You know, then I was like, hold on one second, not so much, you know, and you went, because you let yourself go through the process, because you went with the Lord, because you went to God's word. I mean, by the time we entered around again, for me, year 34 of my life, you were walking away from entire church organizations because they said they would not affirm my gifting. And like, so you had,
it's tough.
It was tough.
Yeah.
Like things were costing you.
Yeah.
So you went from like not being able to look at me and say like, you're gifted at this, to saying like, I will protect you.
Yeah.
I will take the bullets for you. I will take the arrows for you. And so when I sit with women who say like, you know, this is very difficult, my husband doesn't affirm my gifting, I'm like, I get it. I know you know this. Nick will feel no shame because again, we have come all the way around, but like there is no more wounding than like the person you love the most looking at you and saying like, not only are you not allowed to do this, but like, it's not in you or it's not biblical, you know? And it is so wounding. And like, also if you will let each other keep going and keep wrestling, I want to believe that there will be some redemption, you know, in some way, shape or form, even if your story doesn't end like ours.
And I think that's like a marriage thing too.
Yes. About any issue.
Yeah. I feel like the second you can come on each other's team, it changes the game. Like, we would always hear pastors give sermons and talks on like intimacy and sexual relationships. And it's like, now this is how it works. And you know, the guy expects and I'm just like, can we just get like a conversation about encouragement or about being on each other's team or about like telling each other the true depths of your soul and how you feel and being able to be naked with one another in that way. And I'm telling you, that will revolutionize marriage. So I feel like when we entered into the marriage things, it helped the ministry things.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
All that being said, those 4 years, I felt like I all of a sudden got very like humbled of like, you would have to say like, hey, you're up again, or like, we're going to do this, or like, go get after it. And then even like when I got ordained, like from the time I started preaching to the time I got ordained, we probably had a couple of teary conversations where I was like, do you think this is ever going to happen? You know, but then that changed really quickly to like, you coming to me and be like, you're getting ordained this weekend. We've all decided. And I was like, what?
And the reason we all decided is because you had taken a moment where you stepped back from Bright City. And so it was like you needed a moment because of how things were going in your own personal ministry. And so it wasn't like we just told Jess that she was getting ordained.
It was a desire.
Yeah. And I think the other thing too that you need to capture in this moment too, is in just how thick-skinned you were, is like, I mean, even to this day, but I mean, we still have people who leave our church that like, because of how we operate. And it's just so funny because they'll like jump in and be like wanting to get involved, know what we believe, and that like there's no bait and switch. And then, oh, by the way, they're like, hey, we're out. Like, we can't function here. And so not only were you like, what was the theme of this 34 to 38?
Treading lightly.
Like who wouldn't have treaded lightly when we were experiencing the deep paper cuts and wounds of people like telling us to our faces like we are leaving because X, Y, and Z, you know?
Which I will say I still feel in some spaces. For example, you know this, I was preaching somewhere last week, and it is still very common for me to preach places where I might be the first woman a man has ever heard preach. And which
they will tell you.
They will tell me. And they
not the organizers, the actual people.
No, the actual people will come and say, you're the first woman I've ever heard preach. Yeah. And I'm going to try to keep it together while I say this. Like, I really want to honor God in that. Like, I consider that like a huge privilege, and I'm very humbled by it. And I get scared still, and not in our community and not in most places that I go preach. But if I'm going to preach somewhere that I know I'm the first woman that's ever preached there, I do feel like tender of just like, God, I want to honor you. Like, I want to honor your people. And I do not want to offend people, not because I'm a people pleaser, but because I don't want people to walk away from God because of me. Yeah. I want to get into the last phase because this is already such a long podcast.
This is a memoir. This isn't a podcast.
This is a memoir.
Which I knew it would be long for.
Yeah, me too. 38 to present. I'm currently about to turn 42. So about the last 4 years. Pew, 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 pew. I would say I live very free in my gifting. I am very grateful to live in a marriage and to minister in a church where women are not just, it's like not a question of whether or not women are going to be championed. Again, kind of the makeup of Charleston, kind of the makeup of downtown Charleston, and kind of the makeup of Bright City Church is that there have been seasons where we have definitely had more women in leadership than men. And we have definitely become the woman-friendly women in leadership friendly church. Now, that being said, we have got a slew of godly men running after God who are incredible leaders. And God is...
Lots of thoughts about this, but save that for another time.
Yes, that'll be a whole nother podcast. We have 3 more coming. Don't worry. I think we're seeing a real balance return to our church. And again, an Edenic return to partnership. But I want to say something important about this season. And that is that I live so free, even in my role as the founder of Go and Tell Gals. It can be difficult for me to remember that other women do not have the freedoms I have. And I have to constantly remind myself, remind my team, and remind the women at Bright City, we are deeply privileged to have so much invitation, encouragement, equipping, and opportunities to use our God-given gifts. And so if you have made it to minute whatever we're in, 68, I believe, in this podcast so far, this is where I do actually have a really important announcement to share.
Yeah.
And I'm really excited. Pew, pew, pew. Pew, 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 pew. We founded Go and Tell Gals in 2018. Subsequently, the exact same year that I really stepped into my gifting here in the local church. And many of you have probably heard this story. I was reading John 20 on Easter morning, 2018. And I read John chapter 20, where Jesus sees Mary Magdalene and she recognizes that it's him, and he calls her name, and he says, go and tell the brothers. It was almost supernatural, like the words like jumped out on the page to me, go and tell. And I had really been wrestling with like my own calling, obviously, but also how do I equip women who may not live in a church like I live? And so I just knew in that moment, I'm going to start a ministry called Go and Tell Gals. That morning, Easter morning, bought the domain name, got the Instagram handles, did everything. And I didn't know what it would be, but I knew that it would be an organization to equip women. And for the last 8 years, we have gotten to coach thousands of women. We've hosted cohorts. We have done coaching certification. We have hosted retreats. We are hosting our first conference, Brave, in October here in Charleston. But we have been deeply limited in that we have only been able to coach women who can pay for it.
Yep.
And that has never sat right with me. It has never sat right with me that me, a woman who can afford coaching, that I happen to get invited to the kinds of retreats where my gifts are championed, that I happen to get invited to prayer calls where people are praying for me and praying for my calling, that I could call up some of my biggest heroes in the world and say, like, can you give me some insight about my gifting?
Yeah.
But the women who need it most, the women who are in a variety of different churches where their gifts may not be championed, where they may not have a ton of freedom, and where maybe even if they do have freedom, they might not have the resources to get coaching. There's this gatekeeping.
And I need to chime in and say too, as a business leader, you have done many things for free.
Yes.
Like you have let women, like it's like choose your own adventure. This one's on me.
You see me up DMing women and on the phone. I'll be on the phone with somebody and you'll be like, who are you talking to? And I'll be like, somebody just DM me on Instagram.
But I'm talking about like making space for
we've offered scholarships at our own cost.
Many people coming here.
Yeah, absolutely.
And even in you giving everything away for free, it's still hard for women to get somewhere or like people.
It is.
To be,
It's difficult.
Yeah.
Or the hardest part, babe, is you've seen this. We hosted a retreat here at our home for women this spring. And one of the most devastating stories is I had to sit with and listen to one of the women in the room. And she looked at all of us, the 20 of us in the room. And she said, guys, this is great. But I am going back to a space where women don't talk like this.
Yeah.
They're not encouraging each other. They're not spurring each other on to good works. Like you don't know what you have. And I've let that problem sit with me for the last few years. Yeah. And I'm really, really, really excited to announce that Go and Tell Gals is expanding into a nonprofit. And the reason why is because we want to remove that barrier. Yeah. We want to remove that border. Women make up, to be honest, over half the church, and they are the least equipped. It is the hardest for them to find people who will pour into them. And this is here in the US, and this is abroad. Women are leading. Whether you attend a church where women can preach, whether they can pastor, whatever they can do, women are leading. Yep. They're leading in their homes. They're leading at work. They're leading as they disciple one another. They are serving. They are talking about God's word. Yeah. They are carrying weight in the kingdom of God. And many of them, the bulk of them, haven't been poured into to know how to lead themselves and to lead other women well. The kind of things that keep me up at night. The single woman in ministry who feels invisible and isolated because no one knows how to lead her.
Yeah.
I think about the pastor's wife who got handed a job that she'll never be trained for. And she's like drowning in the expectations of other people. Oh, I think about the college student who's leading a Bible study and loves Jesus, but doesn't know how to teach scripture without flattening it. I think about the mom of 3 who's like running her women's church, her church's women's ministry on top of everything else she's doing and hasn't been led in sustainable rhythms for her own life. I think about the women who are doing the work of the kingdom and need to be poured into. And so that is what we're going to begin doing at Go and Tell Gals is we're going to remove this paywall and everything that we've been doing for thousands of women for profit for the last 8 years. We're going to now begin to make access to do it for free. We're going to host weekly prayer calls. We're going to host monthly equipping calls. We're starting cohorts that meet online that I am so incredibly excited about, that we have just the most incredible women trained and ready and equipped to lead. We even are going to be able to host retreats in people's churches to train women in leading themselves and leading others for free.
Yeah.
We are going to send skilled, incredible communicators and leaders to your church to host a retreat for free. And we're so excited and we're expanding into this. And I am really thrilled to say that it has been my joy and our joy. I want to look at you and say, thank you. You have with me invested tens of thousands of dollars into this business over the last, I'm saying tens of thousands, it could have been more. I don't want to do the math, but
you too.
We have been able to invest our own money and our own life and our own sweat and our own tears into this to be able to equip women and now to expand where we want to expand. We are inviting people into it and we are fundraising for the first time ever. So if any of this story has hit your heart, if you have thought about any woman you know anywhere who is leading in any capacity and needs help, if you have been privileged to receive equipping or training and you have ever thought about the women who maybe haven't received that, I need your help. God is currently helping us fundraise $75,000 with the goal of hitting that by October 1st. I need to tell the truth about saying that we're raising $75,000 by October 1st. I'm terrified. You know I'm terrified. I believe in God's capacity. I believe that this is what we're called to do, but I've never fundraised. It has always been more comfortable for me to invest my own money or to just do profitability, just do business. But I really do believe that this is what the Lord is calling us to. And I do believe that this will serve thousands and thousands and thousands of women in the coming years. And so there's going to be links in the show notes. If you would like to be a part of what I'm calling our Founders Circle, we're just asking for some brave people to come together to give $10 a month, to give a one-time gift, to connect us with somebody that you know who needs to be a part of funding this work. Or you can go to goandtellgals.com/give to get all the information. You can download information about what it is that we're going to do over the coming years and how this nonprofit is really coming to fruition. But it would be a great honor to me if you would just consider supporting, not me, not even Go and Tell Gals, but the thousands of women who still need equipping, the hundreds of thousands, the millions of women who still need equipping in the US and abroad, because women matter to God.
Yeah. I know you probably got a way to tie this up, but I think just number one, I'm just so proud of you for fighting the battles, both personally and in the context of the local church, so that the generations behind you, I feel like at one point your Instagram said that you want to leave the generations behind you in awe of God.
Yeah.
And I don't feel like that happens unless you have fought the battles that you have fought. And so it wasn't about the Instagram platform. It was about you physically fighting battles within the context of the local church so that women could, number one, be in awe of God, but also number two, cause other women to be in awe of God. And so I just am so proud of you. And then I'm going to say one thing is I think that God wants to do more than 75,000. And I think when people hear this, I think they're going to, number one, see the problem, feel the problem, and want to help you solve the problem.
Yeah.
And I just, again, I don't want to, it's our personal information, but I'm giving your personal, but I have watched Jess Connolly Ministries, for the lack of better terms, fund everything that you do with Go and Tell Gals. You have poured so much money into how you get to serve other women.
Yeah.
And even
as have you. It's our money.
Yeah, I know.
We have poured back into it.
But I think like, who starts a business to fund something else that makes, you know what I'm saying? Yeah. Like you have done it. And then on the back end, when people say they need scholarship or say that they need something for free, you give it. And so it like double costs you. Mm-hmm. And so I'm so proud of you. I'm so proud of the team. I think 75 might be too low. And I think God wants to do more. And I'm not trying to make you lose sleep tonight. I really do think that this is something that is number one, a felt need.
Yeah.
But also, I think the cultural moment is right to be able to write a new story for the church. And I'm excited to see how he wants to use you to do that. And I think, I don't know how we do this. I hope this podcast does this, but I think one of the things that happens within the context of the church is like, okay, so only men get equipped. Okay, now women get equipped.
Yeah.
But I also feel like there is an opportunity to help those operating systems talk to one another in a way that helps them function well.
Yeah.
And I know we're going to get into that on the podcast.
Yeah.
But I just say all that to say is that I think there's just an incredible opportunity even for that to be able to figure out how we get that Edenic return, because it is about men running in their gifts, and it is about women running in their gifts. And those things do not have to be mutually exclusive.
In Jesus'
but then
name.
Also, how do you do that together?
Yeah.
And so you do that so well, and you lead with me well, but you also lead men in our church really well in an honoring way. And so I'm just so proud of you.
Thank you so much. Well, we're going to keep talking about it. Next week, we're going to talk about the different biblical lenses for if you're like, what about this verse? What about this verse? We're going to talk about them. Yeah. And again, I'm not going to convince you to believe what I believe. Mm-hmm. I'm going to share like, here are some of the different biblical lenses. And the point is you have a biblical lens. Mm-hmm. So like, let's just find out what it is, you know? Week 3, we're going to talk about how we can equip women, like how all women need to be equipped in the same way that I would say all men need to be equipped. And we're going to talk about what that looks like and what some of those tools are and how we can be equipped even if we're maybe not called a pastor or not in a church where we could teach or anything like that. Like, how can we be equipped and lead from where we're at? Mm-hmm. And then lastly, we are going to talk a little bit about that Edenic return and what it could look like and why I think it's so important to the church and to the kingdom right now.
So important.
So please, please, please consider just joining us in this work. We believe that this is what God has called us to. We used to have a t-shirt at Go and Tell Gals. I think we're going to bring it back for our Brave conference. We used to have a t-shirt that the front of it said, the woman before me would be proud. Mm-hmm. And the back of it said, the woman after me will be free. Mm-hmm. And I just want to say, I think that we are in an important cultural moment where we can honor the women who have come before us, who have gotten so many arrows so that we can stand in the leadership that we're standing in today. But I think that we have a duty to consider the women who are coming after us in the next few years and in the next few decades. So see the link in the show notes. Go to goandtellgals.com/give. Join our Founders Circle and prove Nick right that $75,000 was not enough and that we actually maybe need to raise some more before October. I bless you guys. I thank you. And I will see you next week. Friends, I'm so grateful you listened to today's episode. Thanks for spending time with me. It would mean the world to me to connect with you. So you can send me a DM on Instagram at Jess A. Connolly or head to my website, jessconnolly.com for more ways to connect. If you have a minute to subscribe and leave a review of the podcast wherever you listen, it would massively help us reach more people with the good news that they can live fully awake. Let's go.